How did Africa, by every measure the richest continent on Earth, end up the most exploited place in modern history? That is the question Dr. John Henrik Clarke walks you through, line by line, in a 2-hour lecture that does not flinch. We are taking those 2 hours and walking you through them in 16 minutes. Not a summary. The spine. The exact arguments he uses. The exact facts he cites. The exact moments where the room goes quiet because he just named something everyone in it knew, but no one had said out loud. This is The New Black Mind on Transatlantic Productions. Long-form black thought, walked through carefully so the depth doesn't get lost in the length. Sit with this one. The man speaking is Dr. John Henrik Clarke, self-taught, working-class, Georgia-born, who became one of the most consequential black historians of the 20th century. Hunter College, Cornell, founder of Africana Studies departments, he died in 1998. The lecture you're about to walk through was given before that, in a black church, to a black audience that did not need anything explained twice. He doesn't lecture in the academic sense. He testifies. He moves through history the way a preacher moves through scripture, with the same cadence and the same expectation that you are going to do something with what he tells you. If you are not used to that mode, just sit with it. The argument lives in the rhythm as much as in the facts. And the framing he insists on, again and again, is that everything he says has been verified. He is not telling you what he hopes is true. He is telling you what the documents, what the archaeology, what the colonial records themselves admit. The receipts exist. He has seen them. He wants you to go check. He opens with a sentence that becomes the spine of the whole lecture. You cannot understand your world, he says, until you understand the whole world. Not your block, not your country, the whole thing. Because the forces shaping your block were set in motion across continents by people you have never met, using words you have been taught to misread. He calls this the tyranny of words. The same word means one thing in your mouth and a totally different thing in the mouth of a bigot. You say democracy, you mean something. He says democracy, he means something else. But he uses your word so you think you agree. You don't agree. You don't even know what you just signed up for. Democracy, Christian, freedom, civilization, progress. Each of these words has been used to do extraordinary violence under the cover of sounding noble. Until you can hear the double meaning, Clarke says, you cannot organize, you cannot defend yourself, and you cannot even tell when you have already been defeated. Then he gets specific about why Africa, of all places, was the target. Africans, he says, have always had something other people wanted, thought they couldn't do without, and didn't want to pay for. That single sentence is the entire mechanism of colonization in one line. Want plus inability to pay equals theft, organized as policy. He goes through the receipts. Africans were walking around with gold openly on their bodies. Gold ornaments, gold cups, gold dust used as currency in everyday markets. So abundant that travelers' diaries talk about being unable to believe what they were seeing. Land so wealthy that visiting traders would put down a clump of gold while they tied up their horse, walk away unguarded, and come back to it untouched. And it was not only material wealth. The university at Timbuktu predates Oxford by centuries. The libraries at Sankore held texts on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law. The empires of Mali, Songhai, Ghana, Kemet were doing organized scholarship while Europe was still in the middle of what European historians would later call its Dark Ages. Clarke's point is sharp. The world Europeans walked into was not primitive. The world they walked into was richer than the world they came from. When the Portuguese landed on the West African coast in the 15th century, Clarke says, the calculation began the moment they saw the gold. They didn't see people. They saw inventory. They saw a logistics problem. How do we get this back to Lisbon? How do we make this transfer permanent? How do we make sure no one else gets here first? That arrival was not the visit it gets framed as in textbooks. It was the beginning of a 400-year siege. Layered, patient, strategic. Each generation of European powers refined the previous generation's methods. Portugal taught Spain. Spain taught Holland. Holland taught Britain. Britain taught everyone. Each one improved the system, and the language was perfected too. Every theft was renamed a discovery. Every massacre was renamed a pacification. Every enslaved community was renamed labor. The vocabulary did half the work, because once a thing has been named cleanly, the people doing it can sleep at night. Clarke's job in this lecture is to put the original names back on. Clarke pulls out the pattern. Step 1. Name yourself superior. Step 2. Rename what you are about to take so that taking sounds like service. Step 3. Take it. Step 4. Write the history. Step 5. Teach the descendants of the people you took from to think the history you wrote is neutral. And the script ran in Africa, in the Americas, in Asia, in the Pacific. Same 5 steps. Different cast. Different cover stories. The Spanish in Mexico. The British in India. The Belgians in Congo. The Dutch in Indonesia. Clarke insists, this is not a coincidence. This is a method, and the method has a name. He uses the name. We're not going to soften it for you. And his point in laying it all out is not to ask for sympathy. He is handing you a manual. The mechanism that did this is still operational. It's just wearing newer clothes. International finance, trade agreements, resource extraction contracts, cultural exports. Once you can see the shape of it, you can stop being surprised by it. Then he turns to a piece of analysis that lands hard, especially on his own American audience. We won, he says, the right to sit anywhere, to eat anywhere, to shop anywhere. And in the same breath, we lost the institutions we had spent generations building. The black hotels, the black restaurants, the black banks, the black schools, the black insurance companies. They didn't survive integration because we stopped sustaining them. Quote, you deserted all those good black restaurants where those sisters knew how to cook. End quote. He is mourning out loud. Because the cooking was excellent. Because the rooms were ours. Because our money cycled through our hands. And because we traded that, often unknowingly, for the right to sit in someone else's room and pretend it was a victory. His sharper formulation is this. Integration without institutional preservation is just a transfer. A transfer of our spending, our talent, our presence, into rooms we did not own. A real victory would have been integration plus the black institutional base intact. We got one without the other. Clarke says the bill for that trade is still being paid. And then he drops a fact that, the first time you hear it, almost short-circuits the Western brain. Many African societies, he says, ran for thousands of years with no jail system. There was no word in the language that meant jail, because the social fabric was so tight that crime against the community was, by structure, rare. And when it happened, it was handled differently. Individualism, in that frame, was unknown. You behaved in concert with your group, because your standing was your group's standing. To bring shame on your community was a worse punishment than any prison. The community was the deterrent. The community was the court. The community was the rehabilitation. Clarke is not romanticizing this. He is just naming the system. It was a different operating system with different defaults that produced different outcomes for thousands of years. When the West says prisons are inevitable, what they really mean is prisons are inevitable in a culture built on the individual. In a culture built on the group, they are not inevitable. They are not even thinkable. He turns to a comparison most people don't think to make. Caribbean black people grew up, by and large, in a black majority. Schoolmasters were black. Police were black. Petty judges were black. The teacher who scolded you, the constable who watched you, the magistrate who heard your case. Black. American black people grew up in a black minority, surrounded constantly by white authority. And that single difference, he argues, scales. It explains why Jamaicans in Brooklyn open more stores than Jamaicans in Kingston, why some West Indian families slot into the American economy with more confidence than the African Americans next door. Not because one group is harder working, Because one group grew up watching itself run things, and the other grew up watching itself be watched. His point is not to rank black communities. His point is to demand we understand why our different histories produced different muscle memories, and why we need to talk to each other across that difference instead of resenting each other for it. Same diaspora, two different oppressions, two different inheritances, one job. His instruction, by the end, is not abstract. Every euphemism this system uses, you have to learn to pull apart. Discovery is not discovery if people were already there. Civilizing is not civilizing if you destroyed an existing civilization to do it. Free trade is not free if one side never had the option to refuse. Once you can hear the double meanings, the lecture lands very differently. And he insists, the work of learning this is on you. The receipts are public. The texts are in the library. The colonial records, the slave ship manifests, the company ledgers, the missionary correspondence, all of it is sitting on shelves, waiting to be opened. He has done the reading for 50 years. He can hand you the names. He cannot do the reading for you. And once you have done the reading, teach what you find, out loud, to your own, not to convince anyone else. To make sure the next generation does not have to start from zero, again, the way every generation since slavery has had to start from zero. That is the chain of memory he is trying to keep unbroken. Clarke gave this lecture in the 1990s. We are watching it in 2026. And the system he named is still operational. The euphemisms have been updated. The vocabulary has been polished. The mechanisms have moved partly online. But the underlying pattern, the same 5-step pattern he laid out, is still doing what it was built to do. The Congo is still being mined. The Sahel is still being exploited. African data is being harvested by tech companies the way African gold was harvested by trading companies. Cultural exports flow one way. Reparations have not been paid. The lecture is not history, it is description, in past tense, of the present. And the manual he handed you, for how to see it clearly, still works. Pull the words apart. Read your own history. Teach what you find. Build, then preserve, your own institutions. Hold hands across the diaspora. Stop accepting the namings the system gives you, and start using your own. Everything we just walked through comes from one 2-hour lecture by Dr. John Henrik Clarke. We pulled the spine, but the original has texture, anger, humor, the specific way he names each name that no summary can replace. The full video is linked in the description. Go listen. If this hit the way it hit us, subscribe to Transatlantic Productions and turn on notifications. We are walking through more of these under the New Black Mind series. The next one is already in the pipeline. Hit like, share with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment with the one line from this lecture that stayed with you. We read every one. Until next time, learn the words, do the reading, and teach what you find. Thank you for watching.